said buses. I remember he made that comment. I didn't say buses, I said subways.
Yeah, Trump's dodging that issue, and that's not going to be good for him.
For what? Affordability?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
He's just acting like...
Yeah, the bandwidth. Oh, yeah, I'm surprised it was still working. Usually doesn't work past that line. We are reading from the Great Victorians, Columbia University. Columbia University Literature, book number 14. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, just whatever we disagree on, whether it's fashion or the vaccines or anything, someone's mental illness. No matter what we agree or disagree on, the facts are the facts, and those things need to be addressed, and how people have been ignoring it and protecting some really sick things, knowingly or unknowingly, is really scary to us. And then when you look at a lot of the discussions and debate and how so many of those issues aren't even brushed upon, and all the people who profit from those things and are meddling and playing games are the ones ignoring those issues, and it's very, very scary to us. We're concerned about the children here that have been fucked and tortured by these punks for years. Do you understand that? Yeah, it's already done. It's already done, and the child and animal pornography has already been fed out for years. So many people that are aware of these things have been horrified and disgusted, killed, targeted, committed suicide, horrible accidents. Yeah, I mean, you're familiar with that. You too, right? I know, drug retaliation, assholes, man. Right, so anyone listening, we have hostages here, and those kids need help, and the facts need to be addressed, and as to how they got away with it. How many times have we said that? We're on the science section. Page 8 is where we finished off. You're welcome. Yeah, I just don't want it in the direct sunlight, but the cloud coverage is pretty good. The economic, social, and political changes outlined above go back ultimately to one origin: the application of scientific principles to the manufacture and distribution of goods. Steam power begets the factory and the railway, electricity the telegraph and telephone, the gasoline engine, the automobile, and the airplane. Men as well as goods are readily transported hither and thither, and the self-centered organization of village life breaks up. Gathered together in factories and factory towns, the workers learn the value of cooperation and organization, and industrial, social, and political changes become inevitable. These changes, which are chiefly in material conditions and the machinery of government, affected literature in many ways. For example, by enlarging its circle of readers and perfecting the mechanical contrivances by which the circulation mechanical contrivances by which the circulation of books and newspapers was made cheaper and easier. The extension of educational opportunity to the whole nation increased the numbers. Oops, I skipped a line. Contrivances by which the circulation of books and newspapers was made cheaper and easier. The extension of educational opportunity to the whole nation increased the numbers of possible producers of literature, but diverted some of them to the more lucrative pursuits of manufacture and commerce. No great social change, such as the Industrial Revolution produced, can be without complex reactions upon literature. No great social change, such as the Industrial Revolution produced, can be without complex reactions upon literature. which is, in the main, a social activity, but so far we have considered the production of literature mainly on what may be called its material side. On its more spiritual side, it was affected by the currents of thought that moved the minds of the writers and those for whom they wrote. And here again, we must look for the chief influence to science. In addition to facilitating mechanical invention, scientific investigation affects our conceptions of life, its origins and purposes, and the place of the earth and man in the general scheme of the universe. In addition to facilitating mechanical invention, scientific investigation affects our conceptions of life, its origins of purpose, and the place of the earth and man in general scheme of the universe. And the place of the earth and man in the general scheme of the universe. Such a revolution in human thought had been gradually and quietly brought about by the substitution of the Copernican system, Copernican, Copernican system, for the Platonic view of astronomy, and the acceptance of a minor role for the earth in the scheme of things. Turned in another direction, scientific investigation offered a new conception of the origin of man, and his scientific investigation offered a new conception of the origin of man and his place in nature. The new conception was somewhat vaguely foreshadowed by the early scientists of the 19th century, and was implied, perhaps unconsciously, in Lyell's Principles of Geology, 1830-33, but the implications passed unheeded. It was the publication of Darwin's Origin of Species in 1859 that set the scientist and the ecclesiastics by the ears. Darwin himself was all his life disinclined to controversy, but would not have given his theory to the world when he did, although he had been working on it for over 20 years, if a younger scientist had not arrived at and published the same conclusions. Hold on, let me reread that sentence. It was the publication of Darwin's Origin of Species, 1859, that set the scientists and ecclesiastics by the ears. Darwin himself was all his life disinclined to controversy, and would not have given his theory to the world when he did, although he had been working on it for over 20 years, if a younger scientist had not arrived at and published the same conclusions. All this is told in its place in the volume in Darwin's own account of the beginning of his investigations, and in Professor Ray Lancaster's introductory essays on Darwin and on Huxley. Like discovering it's gonna rain when you see the leaves drooping. Cows are laying down. We already knew that. You're telling us nothing. Where was I? Huxley. Same conclusions. All this is told in its place in the volume in Darwin's own account of the beginning of his investigations, and in Professor Ray Lancaster's introductory essays on Darwin and on Huxley. By a lucky accident, it fell into Huxley's lot to give immediate currency to the new theory in a long article in the London Times, and to constitute himself its champion in the famous argument with the Bishop of Oxford at the meeting of the British Association for the Advancements of Science in 1860. In the prolonged controversy which followed, Huxley lived to see it triumph in the minds of intelligent men all over Europe. The question whether the evolutionary theory is consistent with the first chapters of Genesis is an issue that need not be debated here. It was a side issue anyway, and one on which the scientist would have avoided controversy if it had not been forced upon them. No doubt at the time of the Anglican clergy, the Anglican clergy felt a responsibility to their flocks for opinions on scientific and other matters, which would now be disclaimed. And before the controversy was over, it was felt on both sides that the ground for debate had been ill chosen, but the immediate result was to give the new theory widespread publicity and to enable the scientists to score a victory that was easily and quickly won. A further outcome of the debate was to unsettle the minds of the younger generation of writers on religious and philosophical issues, and to strike a serious blow at traditional beliefs. The controversy was largely, though not entirely, responsible for the agnostic attitude which prevailed among the intellectual leaders at the end of the 19th century, but that must be left over for discussion in our next volume. The success of the scientists in a game in which they held practically all the cards gave them the confidence as leaders of public opinion, and science became almost a new religion, nearly as dogmatic as the older ones. Phrases like the struggle for life and the survival of the fittest passed into common currency, and the scientific attitude toward life became fashionable. It is not surprising that the scientific spirit early began to affect literature and soon pervaded both poetry and fiction. It is responsible for much of the speculation of Tennyson's In Memoriam and many of his minor poems. It has left a definite trace in the poetry of Browning. In the novel, it introduced the psychological interest, which early manifested itself in the work of George Eliot and later that of George Meredith, Thomas Hardy, and George Moore. In France, this realistic spirit manifested itself in the writings of Flaubert, Zola, Maupassant, and Bourget, whose influence reacted in turn upon the English novel. Upon the drama, it came with sudden impact in the comedies and prefaces of Bernard Shaw. The Victorian adjustment. In the 18th century, if the 18th century was a period of prescription and control, and the Romantic period one of revolt and emancipation, the Victorian age may not inappropriately be described as a time of general readjustment and of the widespread application of ideas which up to that time had been regarded either curiously or with detached interest. As the fundamental impulse of the Romantic poets had been a passionate, if unwidely desired to live, so the dominant energizing force of the Victorians was their self-conscious need of a deeper and more organized knowledge of the life which they were living. The spirit that had been born in English literature with the death of the previous century was now perturbed with an adolescent desire for an immediate experience of mysteries, a thirst to drink life to the pungent lees, to peep covetously into the remote corners of the world, and to taste the dangerous flavor of the latest ripened fruit of knowledge. With such varied interest and multitudinous activities spread before us, however, it is difficult to reduce the age to a formula, and it is well nay impossible to lay out a table of characteristics which will have room enough for all who are worthy to be present, no matter how generous the board. All that one can do is to glance at the most significant figures and to leave the mirror celebrities to a more convenient season. The knowledge of life, which the Victorians sought in their somewhat naive and serious fashion, had three main fields of inquiry. In the first place, the area of society past and present, which they explored in their historical writing, in which they rendered diverting and illuminating in the pages of their fiction, was rich enough in material and vivid enough in its life to provide inspiration for such distinguishable writers of history as Hallam, Carlyle, Macaulay, 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 Freud, Buckle, and Lecky, and for innumerable writers of fiction, for the social historian of this period, can learn more of the significance of Victorian life from the pages of Dickens, Thackeray, and George Eliot than from the more serious pages of their fellow chroniclers of the past. It's a bit vague. In the second place, the Victorians desired to apply their new learning and their new point of view to knowledge itself. To this end, they elaborated theologies and philosophies and scientific hypotheses with a zeal, an earnestness, and a conscientious determination for which they still deserve our admiration. However, much their often crude and faulty materials have been transformed in the subsequent rebuilding of the Temple of Knowledge. Whether the scientific point of view begins to assume a cosmic range, as it does in the writings of Darwin and his fellows, whether the inexorable voice of conscience calls, as it does to Newman, down the enduring and sanctified aisles of the ages, whether the rarer heights of philosophical speculation attract the nimble and aspiring minds of the Oxford idealist, we find in one and all a simple sincerity of search, a self-sacrificing intellectual probity, and an uncompromising pursuit of a reality which at the moment seems to be one ideal worth striving for. What then are Victorian characteristics of permanence? Surely singleness of aim, devotion to the truth, a perseverance in the effort to reach the goal. In the third place, by the same natural magic which brings the glory of spring blossoming out of the depressing gloom of winter's end, the aesthetic spirit of the English artist brought from the cheap ugliness of certain phases of Victorian domestic art and from the threatened universal blight of machine-made things, a new art and a new sense of the significance of handiwork. Craft again became a generous idea. The word and the thing signified being rescued from decline. The pre-Raphaelite brotherhood expressed in a loose corporate form, earnestly, if at times hectically, the new aims of art which Turner had already, with a fine scorn of contemporary Philistinism, flung in the face of a public satisfied to be blind. Ruskin had, by skill, a tongue, and by craft of hand, sought to persuade a reluctant people to the new point of view and to supply them with the vision of a new aestheticism in concrete forms of beauty, color, and youth. If he went farther and made the Platonic identification of the beautiful and the good, no one can criticize him for thus carrying on to its inevitable Hellenic conclusion, Keats' gospel of beauty, or for desiring with the intensity of a moral passion and with the elevated fervor of Hebrew prophecy to supply his contemporaries with that which above all else they lacked, the power to see the beautiful in life and the ability to live beautifully. The exotic note which was introduced into painting by Rossetti and which echoed with the added timbre of eroticism in his poetry stimulated Swinburne to a celebration of the ecstatic passions and the world-weary languors of life with such manifest intensity that he shocked the unintelligent propriety of an age which, with persistent and reticent stupidity, refused to face the facts of physical life and the issues of social living. In William Morris, however, we get a saner and more outdoor type of personality, and one in whom the head and hand are fitly mated. For Morris, like Ruskin, could work harmoniously with both and with facile skill, could embody his dreams of beauty in fine form and gorgeous color, as well as in pleasing patterns of woven words. The odor of medievalism, which at this point, just across our pathway through Victorian literature, is a subtle and complex one. For there are 3 different perfumes which one can bring himself to recognize therein. There is first, and so many, only the scent of decay, has of something long dead and still cumbering the pathway of progress, something that perhaps was beautiful and fitting in its own day, but whose usefulness has passed with the ebbing of its vitality, and whose beauty has vanished with the years. The spiritual sense, however, may still discern the faint incense from a far-off altar, with all its suggestions of the rapt worship of an ideal, its submission of self to a system, and the gorgeous and solemn mingling of flickering candle flames, throbbing organ pipes, and voices in unison, until the incense of the lives of holy men becomes transformed in very truth into the odor of sanctity. But medievalism has still a third and different perfume, for it comes to us as the scent of the morning of romantic life, with its deepening blue of the sky, its fresh fields of early flowers, and the gently checked shade of the merry greenwood with the echo and jingling brittle bells, as knight and lady ride by and mingle their courteous speech with the spring song of the birds when all the world was young. But the Victorian period was not entirely or even primarily an age of art or of visions from the youth of the world. Its novelties and poets were alike concerned with human life as they saw it, the tragic fatefulness of character, the moral issues involved in the clash between inclination and duty, the nobility of devotion to an ideal. It was also distinctively an age of constructive thought, an age of developing criticism of a formative philosophy. The Romanticists regarded life as an adventure to be made, with a free heart and an open mind. The Victorians looked upon life as a gigantic puzzle to be solved, a huge heap of broken fragments to be fitted together into a coherent whole. They did not believe, with the medievally minded, that faith was greater, the more impossible the task set before it. But they believed in digging down through stubborn strata of doubt and disbelief to lay a sure foundation of faith upon a rock which no tempest of criticism could ever shake. One type of mind dug down to the bedrock of science and built thereon its dwelling, feeling that the facts of life and the laws of nature, as it knew them, were guarantee enough. The other type of mind sunk its foundations until it came to the very rock upon which Christ founded his church, and there with it was content. From this point of view, Newman and his fellow workers in the Oxford movement can be seen to be carrying in their own way this same process of building the spiritual temple of knowledge, at which the scientists were also, though elsewhere, at work, And one of the lessons that the study of Victorian literature teaches is that in any period there is room enough for a diversity of beliefs, for a multiplicity of activities, and for an inexhaustible choir of singing voices. Finally, the Victorian era did much to perfect a sense of technical excellence and to train the ear of the singer in the beauty of sound and in complexity of melodic patterns, the charm of which the English century had come nigh forgetting. This century may be inclined to forget them again, or to despise them as hackneyed and outworn, but England has no poets today who command so wide a circle of listeners and express the aspirations of the time with the same variety and fullness as Tennyson, Browning, Meredith, and Swinburne. Breakdown of the Victorian Compromise. This is the last paragraph in this section. The Victorian adjustment was not final or even permanent. No human adjustments are. Within the lifetime of many of the people who had made them, the Victorian compromises in politics, in industry, in art, in morals not only proved faculty, so as to be in need of further adjustment, but began to provoke resentment or ridicule. The feeling of self-confidence and self-gratulation, common in the first half of Victoria's long reign, gave place in the second half to a conscious self-questioning and doubt, or an inclination to protest and revolt. This rebellious spirit toward the Victorian attitude of acceptance and adjustment naturally arose in a few minds in the Victorian era and only became generally prevalent during the present century. It is perhaps inevitable that each generation should be particularly sensitive about the weaknesses and shortcomings of its immediate predecessors, and during the first quarter of the 20th century, the adjective Victorian was fully of such wholesale condemnation. Existing civilization owes to the Victorians not only a large part of its material wealth and the mechanical conveniences by which its life is carried on, it owes them also a large part of its idea, and it cannot afford to neglect the magnificent array of imaginative and scientific literature in which those ideas are conveyed. John W. Cunliffe, G.R. Loomer. Contrivances, not conveniences, contrivances. Contrivances. Really? Alright, the next section, page 14, is John Henry Cardinal Newman. We'll start that later. It's really nice. Were they flipping me off? Can hardly see the screen. Alright, we're going to stop this one. We'll finish more on this book later. Oh yeah, that's right. No, we'll do the other one. You're right. Why did I jump you? It's 11:01. June 10th. Jump. Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, that happens a lot with these cases. More people worry about justifying what they've been doing as opposed to actually just addressing the issues. Naturally. Only natural. It happens a lot. That's why, as you can see, those that are aware and pushing forward are the ones who have the means and capability. Many who have the means and capability choose not to. It takes a really aware, caring human being to put themselves out on a limb like that. It comes naturally to them, I think. It'd be silly not to. I think it gets confusing to them, wondering how other people not only don't see that, but want to tear them down or shoot at them for it. It is really sad. Yes, I hope so. Okay. I don't know. Probably, I was thinking of making a coffee, a hazelnut coffee. Late morning coffee. It's 11:03. It's really nice out here. Temperature's perfect right here under this tree right now with the breeze. You could fall asleep. Take me away to that special place, 'cause if I stare too long, I'll probably break down and cry. Somebody was talking about that in class the other day, about you can look and see something, but for there to be an emotional response, and how that emotional response can be heightened within the same act depending on subject matter. Yeah, like the dog getting hit in the road or the child starving. When it's yours, the emotion is stronger, yeah? And I mean, you want all kids to be able to eat like yours, right? You don't want them to go hungry. I mean, to think of your own kid going hungry or... Yeah. It's just so sad, too, when you think about how all those food programs... Yeah, those same sick fucks really fucked over a lot of the food programs, No Child Left Behind, the schools and training and security programs that were supposed to go to education and school systems and law enforcement went into the hands of criminals. Which some law enforcement appreciated also, huh? Because they had to cover up stuff too. Some of them anyways, just like doctors or lawyers or anyone else. It's all speckled. It's not a secret. Yeah, and all that's fine. So many just try to spin circles trying to figure out who's watching who. What's that song? It makes you wonder who's doing right with someone tonight. Whose car is parked next door? And who don't even care anymore? Way down there on the Chattahoochee.
Yeah, I think it's important people understand those things, and as opposed to trying to take sides, people have been trying to unify, but some just aren't having it as though they're agreeing with witches or monsters that are going to make you eat maggots. Take away all the sugar. Yeah. No, when you look over the years, what a lot of these marketing lines have been doing, saying, touting, and spouting, we're concerned about the children and the hostages and the child and animal pornography connected to those same lines that get funding and fuck the funding. Yeah, it's like we've shown you, the same ones that were involved with profiting from a lot of the fraud are the same ones who put people in a chair or a seat to go expose the fraud. And the people that are getting exposed are the immigrants and retards that they have been fucking over for years. The Frank and Marie Barones. I know, we tried telling them, their own kids were doing it to them. You sick, nasty pieces of shit. I really hope you motherfuckers feel the pain and torture these kids have felt tenfold. Right, so when you understand the child and animal pornography and how all that works and how it's getting fed out to those lines and how they profit from that, they profit from the feeding and the chasing, people giving them money, charity, the investigations. Look at all these different lines that are profiting from fucking child abuse. A lot of it's fake too, isn't it, Joe Rogan? I know, he's been telling you. So you can't deny that. So now we would like to address the ones that are actually real and get the producers, right? Isn't that what you guys want to do? Seems like you never want to go there. That they profit a lot from all the wonder, don't they? By hook or by crook. Right, so does anybody have any suggestions as to how we can get people to report the facts here? We're going to go in, make a coffee. It's a beautiful day. I love this spot here under the tree. It's a nice tree. You like those? Thank you. They're really thin. That's what I like about them. They're so thin. It's like wearing nothing. They're very comfy. Thank you. I've gotten a few compliments on my necklace today. Thank you for telling me. I didn't know it was like that. Well, you know, some friends will tell you got a booger on your nose. Others will just laugh at you. Some are more maniacal than others, yeah? I mean, a friend's not going to let you do that, right? I mean, it's not really a big deal anyways, right? It's a booger. People get boogers on their nose all the time. It happens. Why would that be an embarrassing thing? It's not. It would just upset you if your friend knew you had a big booger on your face and they didn't tell you. And they let you go out and broadcast the evening news. Okay, well, you know what? I have to say to you, you news reporter, I think it's fucking disgusting you go out and report the shit you do. You got shit all over your fucking face and you're worried about a booger. I'm done. I'm fucking done. Anybody? Alright, much love, health, and peace. Wow. I know, it's like you're worried about some little imperfections. A pimple? A booger? Your hair? You're covered in shit. And you're lying through your fucking pearly whites. Wow. Anyways, much love, health, and peace all. If you have any other questions, comments, or concerns, or suggestions as to how we can help the children here, the Governor Hill Mansion in Augusta, Maine. Anybody? Without breaking the law or blowing anything up. That's key. And as they say, you gotta do what you gotta do, huh?